The orbital mirror station never felt heroic to Hannah Voss. It felt like a utility room wrapped around the sky, built for duty rather than pride. Fans pushed dry air through narrow ducts, and every surface carried the faint smell of warmed metal. A coffee pouch floated in front of her face, wobbling with each breath, until she pinned it to the console with tape and pulled up the night shift dashboard. Most nights were routine, and routine was the point. A few degrees of tilt here, a small dimming there, and the world below stayed calm as long as the numbers behaved. Tonight, the numbers did not behave. A heat map bloomed across the main panel. One region flashed a shade too bright, and it was not a storm signature or wildfire bloom. It was a slow, unnatural rise that looked like a hand turning a knob with patient intent. Hannah leaned closer, eyes dry from recycled air, and ran the standard checks she could do half asleep. Mirror angle drift read normal. Reaction wheel load read normal. Thermal loop pressure read normal. The anomaly remained anyway, steady and wrong. She tapped the region tag and watched the name unfurl in plain text. The label read Kestrel Basin. Her throat tightened for a second. Then her training slid into place. Clean and automatic. She opened the log. The anomaly had begun less than an hour ago, and a configuration request had landed in the queue. Urgent, lawful, and sealed. Sealed requests were rare for a mirror station. Sealed requests were never good. The console chimed again, and a new message pinned itself to the top of the screen. Operator Voss, it read. Confirm receipt of directive Sunline. Hannah did not like how her last name looked in official text. It made her feel like a piece of equipment with a serial number. She opened the directive anyway, and her unease deepened because it was short. Too short for something sealed. Tilt the southern panel cluster by a prescribed arc. Maintain for a prescribed duration. Limit redistribution. No public notice. In the margin sat a signature line. Director Soren Cade, Climate Security Authority. Hannah's fingers hovered over the confirmation button. She could almost feel the camera above her console, silent and patient, watching her like a witness that never blinked. She did not press confirm. Instead, she pulled up the predictive overlay used for harmless things. The one built for easing heat waves over cities and nudging sunlight onto winter farmland. The overlay painted the future in soft colors at first. Then the colors over Kestrel Basin hardened into bright, aggressive tones. Heat stress warnings stacked, crop failure probability spiked, water conflict risk rose like a tide that had found a new shoreline. Her breath went shallow, and she forced it steady. Maybe the model was wrong. Maybe the data feed was corrupted. Maybe it was a calibration maneuver and she was panicking over nothing. She opened the raw numbers and went hunting for excuses. But the numbers gave her none. Minutes bled away in silence. Somewhere below, an early morning was beginning, unaware of the lever poised above it. Hannah toggled her headset and spoke into an empty comm channel that still felt safer than the official one. Systems. This is Mirror Operations. Mateo, are you awake? There was a pause, a faint click, and then Mateo Reyes answered, his voice warm with sleep and irritation. Hannah? It is not even morning. What is on fire? I have a sealed directive from Climate Security. She said, I need you to verify the control path. I need to know if the request came through the secure relay, or if it was injected locally. Mateo exhaled slowly, as if trying to keep his temper from waking fully. That is a bad sentence to hear on a quiet shift. He said, send me the header. Hannah forwarded the metadata and stared at the confirmation button as if it might change shape when she looked hard enough. The directive sat there, waiting in its neat little box. Lawful, urgent, sealed. She could obey, she could sign, tilt, and never speak of it again. Or she could hesitate long enough for the mirror's window to close and force the directive to be delayed. Delay would be recorded, and delay would be noticed. She lifted her coffee pouch, took a sip, and tasted metal. On the far side of the panel, Earth turned beneath them, slow and indifferent, like a planet that had learned to keep its secrets. Hannah had been trained to trust the hierarchy, not because she loved authority, but because space punished improvisation. A bad decision up here did not merely break a rule. It broke oxygen, power, thermal balance, or orbit, And the price was paid without negotiation. In the academy, they had shown a case study using old footage with the sound stripped out. A mirror operator had tried to be clever during a dust season, spreading light to reduce glare on a coastal corridor. The maneuver drifted into a cloud edge, and the beam clipped a hillside settlement for minutes. No one had died, but the footage of blistered fields and burnt roof tar had become a permanent warning. The instructor said the same sentence every cycle, like a ritual. The mirror is not a god. It is a lever. Levers do not forgive the hand that slips. Hannah carried that line like a spare tool. And she carried something else too. Something heavier than training. Kestrel Basin had not been a dashboard label when she was young. It had been wind that scratched your skin in a sky so pale you learned to read its small changes like language. It had been the taste of water that came out warm by noon because the drums sat too long in sun. Her mother, Mina Voss, never talked about politics. She talked about weather as if it were a neighbor you had to respect. Heat, Mina had said, is not a mood, it is a tax. You pay it in sweat. If you cannot pay, you pay in blood. When Hannah left for training, Mina hugged her and whispered one request that stayed in Hannah's bones. Do not forget that people are softer than systems. Hannah had not forgotten, and that was the problem. Director Soren Cade was another problem. Even on station, far from the feeds, his reputation drifted through the crew like dust that found every seam. He spoke in stable graphs and calm ratios, and people credited him with preventing 2 major water conflicts from turning into open war. People also accused him, quietly, of using pressure that looked like accidents, a delayed aid convoy, a sudden fuel audit, a solar subsidy withdrawn at the perfect time. No one proved anything, because proof was expensive and the cost always landed on someone too tired to fight. Hannah had never expected to see his signature in her queue. The mirror station handled climate smoothing, not coercion. If climate security was reaching up here, it meant ground politics had found a new lever. 3 minutes later, Mateo's voice returned, sharper now, fully awake. It came through the secure relay. He said, full chain, no tamper flags. Hannah, whatever that order is, it is real. Hannah looked at Kestrel Basin on the map and remembered the smell of dust after a dry season. She remembered her mother's hands, cracked from work and still gentle. Her thumb hovered, trembling. She did not confirm. She opened a new ticket instead and filed a request the system could not ignore, thermal stress audit. Pre-tilt verification required, safety compliance check. Then she sent Mateo a second message. Meet me at the service hatch by the south thermal manifold. She said, now. Hannah, Mateo said, and his voice softened in a way that made her chest tighten. What are you doing? Buying time, she answered, or losing everything. I do not know yet. She ended the call before her courage could evaporate. The station did not care about courage. It cared about logs and checklists. And it cared about compliance. The console flashed again. Second notice. Confirm receipt of directive sunline. Hannah let it sit. She pushed off from her console and drifted down the corridor, one hand skimming the wall rails. The station's lighting was dimmed for night cycle, a soft amber that made every surface look tired. Mateo had come to orbit for different reasons than Hannah. He grew up in a coastal arcology where summer never ended and sea level warnings were part of school drills. When the Mirror program expanded, he saw it as a way to keep people alive without joining the military. He liked machines because machines could be repaired. He liked procedures because procedures did not lie. He liked quiet shifts because quiet meant the world below had not broken again. He did not like sealed directives, because sealed directives meant the world below had broken and someone wanted the break to stay private. The south thermal manifold bay smelled faintly of warm plastic and lubricant. It was a small room full of pipes, insulation wraps, and safety labels that felt too cheerful. The labels promised things like warning hot surface and check seal integrity. But they did not mention the simpler truth. All of this existed to throw heat away into vacuum. Because every miracle in orbit came with waste. Mateo was already there when Hannah arrived. His boots were anchored to a floor strap, his hair floating in a messy halo, and he held a diagnostic tablet close to his face. Eyes narrowed. Tell me, he said, that you are not about to commit a felony for a weather map. Director Cade signed the directive. Hannah said, tilt southern cluster. Hold. No redistribution. Mateo's eyebrows rose. That is not a weather maneuver. He said, that is a pressure maneuver. Hannah nodded once. Kestrel Basin is not just a region tag. She said, it is my home. Mateo did not offer pity. He offered reality. If you refuse, he said, they can remote lock the panel cluster. They can run it from ground control. They can label you non-compliant and replace you. They still need an operator on station, Hannah said. Mateo's gaze slid to a camera dome in the corner. They can fly up an operator with a security detail, he said, or they can put you in a sleep pod and call it medical. Cold spread through Hannah's chest. She had seen the pods stacked in the medical bay like spare furniture. They were meant for emergencies. They could also be used for quiet removals. The kind that left no screaming. Only paperwork. Hannah opened her wristcom and scrolled through personal contacts. Her mother's name was there. Bright and simple, and she tapped it with a thumb that felt numb. A tone sounded. Then a delay notice appeared. Signal latency. Relay congestion. Estimated connection time uncertain. Hannah swallowed. Open a narrowband, she told Mateo. Anything that bypasses the official channel. Mateo stared at her. That is monitored. So is everything, Hannah said, but I need one message to go through. Mateo hesitated, fighting with himself. He was a systems man. Built for repair, not rebellion. Still, he believed in what the Mirror program promised the public, quiet corrections. Shared mercy, ordinary survival. He rotated toward a panel and popped it open with practiced ease. You are going to ruin my sleep schedule, he muttered. Hannah almost laughed, and the sound surprised her with how close it was to breaking. Mateo ran a cable from the tablet into the panel, hands moving fast, his face carrying the focused calm of a man repairing something that mattered. There is an old maintenance beacon, he said. It was meant for crew rescue. It is low power. It is ugly. It might get out. Hannah leaned in. Can you point it at Kestrel Basin? It does not aim, he said. It shouts. If the local network is listening, they might hear it. Then we make the message small, Hannah said. A warning, not a confession. Mateo's fingers paused. What do you want to say? He asked. Hannah pictured her mother's kitchen. The broken cabinet hinge they never had time to fix. And the way Mina kept cooking anyway, as if making food was a form of defiance. Hannah opened her eyes. Tell them the sun is coming, she said. Tell them to cover water. Shade livestock. Move children to the basement rooms. Tell them to sleep during peak heat and work at night. Tell them to ration. Mateo's jaw flexed. You are talking like you already decided, he said. I have not, Hannah said, but the window is closing. Time moved without comment. In a few hours, orbital geometry would align with the southern cluster's optimal tilt range. If the directive executed then, the heat would land where it was aimed, clean and concentrated. Mateo finished the connection and looked up. Message ready, he said. One burst, short. Hannah spoke into the tablet microphone, voice steady only because she forced it to be. Residents of Kestrel Basin, heat surge incoming within 1 day. Use shade, protect water, move vulnerable people to cooler rooms. Do not panic, get ready. Mateo hit transmit. The beacon chirped once, thin as a bird trapped in metal. Then the panel flashed red. Unauthorized transmission detected. Security audit initiated. Hannah's stomach dropped. Mateo froze. That was faster than I expected, he whispered. Back to console, Hannah said. Now. The mirror station did not panic. It escalated. A warning stack unfolded across Hannah's display in orderly layers. Beacon emission outside scheduled maintenance window. Non-standard channel use during sealed directive period. Potential information breach. The station did not speak. It did not need to. The text would be copied into the permanent log, mirrored to ground archives, and compared against every past incident profile. Hannah once heard an older operator call it the station's memory. And it was not the human kind. It was a colder kind. A memory designed to prove blame. A small icon changed color near the top bar. External comm priority rising. Mateo's pupils looked too large in the dim light. They have an automated listener on the maintenance band, he said. I thought it was dormant. It is never dormant, Hannah replied, and she hated how calm her voice sounded. Calm was a mask. Calm kept her hands steady. They moved through the corridor fast and silent, like thieves in their own workplace. Hannah caught a glimpse of a checklist posted on the wall. Printed paper under plastic. It was ridiculous and comforting at once. In orbit, even paper became a ritual. A promise that something stayed the same when everything else floated. When Hannah reached her station, the main panel was already changing. A security overlay had appeared, and a countdown had started. Compliance review in progress. Operator confirmation required. The confirmation button glowed brighter, as if the station had grown impatient. Hannah's headset crackled, and a new voice arrived, calm and polished. Operator Hannah Voss, it said. This is Director Soren Cade. We will speak now. Hannah's skin prickled. The director was not supposed to call an operator directly. He was too high, too distant, too busy, yet his voice was in her ear as if he were standing beside her. Hannah pressed accept, because refusal would become another log entry. Director, she said. His voice carried no anger. It carried certainty. You received directive Sunline, he said. You did not confirm. You attempted a delay. You transmitted an unauthorized warning. Yes, Hannah said. Why? Cade asked, as if he were curious. Hannah could have lied, but lies to a man like this were useless. Because you were aiming at my home, she said. There was a pause, not shock or regret, only calculation. I am aiming at a rebellious supply corridor, he said. Your home happens to be within it. That is a nice way to say you are turning sunlight into punishment. Hannah replied. Cade's tone remained smooth. You work on a mirror station, he said. You turn sunlight into stability every day. This is the same tool. It is not the same intent, Hannah said. Cade sighed softly, like she was a child insisting fire was unfair. Operator Voss, he said. Kestrel Basin sits on water infrastructure we cannot afford to lose. The Dryline Union is sabotaging pump stations and blaming Central Authority. They want chaos. Chaos breeds war. Hannah gripped the console rail until her knuckles hurt. So you will burn them into obedience? She asked. I will apply pressure, Cade said. Targeted, limited, reversible. Heat does not feel reversible to a body, Hannah said. Cade's voice sharpened for the first time. Bodies die in war, he said. My job is to keep war from arriving everywhere. If one basin must sweat so 10 cities do not bleed. That is the arithmetic. My mother is not arithmetic, Hannah said. Cade's voice softened again, and that softness was worse than hardness. I understand you feel attached, he said. Attachment is a human feature. It is why we use operators instead of full automation. Operators sense nuance. Hannah stared at the glowing confirmation button. Then sense this nuance, she said. You are creating an enemy. Cade replied without hesitation. The enemy already exists, he said. I am shortening the conflict. Confirm the directive. Your audit will be closed. Your record will remain clean. Hannah heard the trap hidden inside his kindness. And if I do not? She asked. Cade spoke like he was reading a weather report. Then station security will assume control, he said. You will be relieved. You will be detained for investigation. The directive will execute anyway. Hannah's heart pounded. You do not need me, she whispered. I do, Cade said, because if you confirm, the record shows compliance. It shows a lawful chain with no resistance. It keeps the station out of public controversy. It keeps panic low. Hannah understood then. This was not only about heat. It was about narrative, the story the world would be told. Operators were the last soft layer of the system. That was how the program advertised itself. Human judgment, human care, human nuance. Hannah had always suspected the other reason too. Humans made better shields than machines. A machine executed and took blame only when someone forced it to. A human executed and took blame by default. Because humans had faces, and faces could be shown on screens. Cade wanted Hannah's face on the record. He wanted her thumbprint on suffering. It would make the operation look like routine adjustment rather than a state weapon. It would make the basin look like it lost to weather rather than policy. Hannah remembered something a first mentor once said as a joke. Every tool becomes a weapon if you let the paperwork decide. The mentor had laughed. Hannah did not. Cade kept speaking like a man balancing accounts. He never said punishment. He said pressure. He never said fear. He said deterrence. He never said coercion. He said stability. You have a few minutes. He said, confirm. Then go back to your quiet life. The line went silent. Hannah sat in the hum of machines, feeling the weight of the button. On the map, Kestrel Basin glowed like a wound. And a few hours into the shift, the station felt smaller than ever. The first security team arrived before Hannah could breathe out her fear. They moved down the corridor in controlled pushes. Boots strapped, hands anchoring on rails, uniforms the same gray as the station walls. The leader stopped behind Hannah's chair and spoke in a neutral voice. Operator Voss, he said, you are under compliance review. Keep your hands visible. Do not touch the primary controls. Hannah lifted her hands slowly, palms open. I am the operator, she said. Primary controls are my job. Not during review, the leader replied. He gestured to a technician who drifted to a secondary console and plugged in a security key. The main panel changed again. Control authority shifting. Station security override pending. Hannah's chest tightened. They were taking the wheel from her hands while keeping her in the driver's seat. A message appeared. Final notice. Confirm receipt of directive Sunline. The security leader leaned closer. You can make this easy, he said. Easy meant clean logs, and clean logs meant the mirror could hurt quietly. Hannah did not press it. The leader exhaled, almost bored. Understood, he said. Proceed. The technician entered a command. The panel flashed. Override accepted. Directive Sunline scheduled. Hannah's stomach dropped into a hollow place. On the screen, the southern cluster angle indicator began to move. It turned slowly and deliberately, like a giant eye rotating toward something it had decided to watch. A warning line appeared beneath it. Thermal load rising. Cooling capacity approaching limit. Hannah watched the numbers climb. Not too fast and not enough to trigger safety shutdown. Someone had planned this well. The mirror station did not display cruelty. It displayed efficiency. On the ground, Kestrel Basin had its own quiet war before the sun sharpened. The basin was a patchwork of farms, pump stations, and storage yards. Water came through pipes that snaked across dry soil like veins. Some pipes were old, patched so many times the metal looked quilted. Others were new, stamped with the Central Authority seal and guarded by contractors who claimed they were neutral. Neutral was a story too. In the market lanes, people traded under shade tarps and watched the sky like it owed them money. Rumors about the Dryline Union traveled faster than official notices. Some said the union was a labor alliance angry at quotas and audits. Others said it was a smuggling corridor hiding profit under slogans. Others insisted it was simply neighbors pushed too hard who decided to push back. Mina Voss knew a simpler truth. When water was scarce, everyone became political, even if they hated the word. The week before, a pump station went down for half a day. The official notice said maintenance. The union pamphlet said sabotage by central contractors. A local official stood on a crate and promised stability, then drove away in an air-cooled vehicle with tinted windows. Mina watched with dry eyes. Promises did not lower temperature. Shade did. She spent that evening mending shade cloth and talking with neighbors about moving elders into the coolest rooms. Not because she expected an attack from the sky, but because she had learned to live as if every summer would be worse. When Hannah's name appeared on Mina's wristcom as a missed call, Mina smiled and felt a sting in her chest. Her daughter rarely called during orbit shifts. Calls meant trouble or love, and sometimes those were the same. Mina typed a short message anyway. I am fine. Drink water. Do not work too hard. Then she went back to the cloth, stitching like the future could be kept together by thread. Back on the station, Hannah's headset crackled again. I regret that you chose resistance. Cade said, you forced a visible intervention. You forced it, Hannah replied through clenched teeth. Cade ignored the accusation. Listen carefully, he said, the directive is executing. Your duty now is to prevent accidents. Monitor thermal limits. If you sabotage, you will be treated as hostile. You already treat me as hostile, Hannah said. Cade's voice stayed calm. No, he said, I treat you as human. Humans hesitate. Humans love. Humans make dangerous choices. That is why we contain them. The words landed like a slap. Hannah looked at the Earth view. A thin line of dawn sliding over ocean. Somewhere below, Kestrel Basin was waking. On the ground, the morning began like any other. The air was dry, the kind that made wooden doors shrink and crack. Mina stepped outside to check the shade cloth over the water drums. She was not a scientist or a politician. She was a woman who learned to read the sky because the sky decided whether her neighbors ate. The sunrise looked normal, and it looked too normal. The light felt sharper than it should, arriving in clean bright sheets as if the air had been scrubbed. Mina turned on the local radio, the one that ran on solar and habit. A calm voice spoke about routine advisories, hydration, work early, check on elders. Then the audio stuttered, and a thin, ugly chirp cut through the calm. A message followed, clipped and strange, as if spoken through a cheap speaker. Residents of Kestrel Basin, heat surge incoming within 1 day. Use shade, protect water, move vulnerable people to cooler rooms. Do not panic, get ready. Mina froze. She knew her daughter's voice even through distortion. Hannah. Mina's hand trembled as she turned the volume up, as if volume could make the message safer. The broadcast ended, and the radio returned to calm music like nothing had happened. Mina stood in the yard and felt the sun on her cheeks. A heat surge within 1 day. Her first instinct was denial. Her second was action. She walked to the neighbor's house and knocked hard. Jay, she called, wake up, we need to cover the water. A window slid open and a face appeared. Confused. It is early, Jay said. Mina lifted her chin, eyes hard. My daughter warned me, she said, something is coming. Jay's confusion shifted into worry, but he still clung to skepticism the way people clung to shade. Your daughter is on an orbital station, he said. They do not call farmers. They do not warn basins. Mina nodded once. That is why I am at your window, she said. If she broke rules to send that, it means rules are not protecting us. Jay's eyes flicked toward the sky as if he expected to see a reflection. The mirror array was not visible by day unless you knew exactly where to look. That was part of its power. It could act without being seen. Jay disappeared from the window. A moment later, the door opened. He looked older up close. Hair damp with sleep, shoulders tense. What do we do? He asked. Mina did not waste time on explanations. In Kestrel Basin, explanations were a luxury. People listened to urgency. She moved down the lane, knocking on doors, using names, using the tone that turned hesitation into action. Within an hour the lane shifted. Shade cloth was pulled tighter. Water drums were moved under cover. A neighbor dragged an old battery fan into the common room for elders. Someone fetched salt packets from a storage crate, because heat stole more than water. At the clinic, Nurse Delia Park took Mina seriously without asking for proof. Delia had seen too many summers to demand comfort before action. She set up a cooling corner. Nothing advanced, only wet cloths and shaded mats and a schedule for checking pulse and breathing. She sent the youngest staff to the school to move children into the lowest rooms, where concrete held night coolness a little longer. By late morning, people began to sweat without moving. The air pressed down. Dogs stopped barking and crawled under porches. Mina wiped her forehead, tasted salt, and looked up again. Hannah, she whispered, what did you do? The sky did not answer. It only grew brighter, as if someone were polishing it from above. Back on the station, Hannah watched ground telemetry spike. Heat indices rose faster than natural models predicted. Not dramatically, but just enough to ruin a week. Then a month. Then a season. The mirror did not need to create fire. It only needed to push the basin past its edge. The security leader floated behind her, arms folded. "Monitor," he said. "I am monitoring," Hannah replied, her voice flat. Thermal load warnings blinked yellow, and cooling loops held for now. The southern cluster locked into its new angle. Directive sunline active. A sterile line of text appeared as if finality could be typed into existence. The operation would run for 8 hours. 8 hours was enough to kill crops, break bodies, and make the Dryline Union look incompetent. 8 hours was enough to make the Central Authority look like the only way out. Cade's voice returned. "Operator Voss, you will record performance data," he said. "You will ensure the mirror remains within safety parameters. If the panel overheats, you will shut it down, and I will assign responsibility." Hannah understood again. He wanted the benefit, and he wanted her to carry the blame if anything went wrong. Far below, at a pump station office on the basin's edge, a young technician named Rafi Nasser watched the temperature feed climb. Rafi was not a rebel by nature. He was a repairman who tightened bolts, cleaned filters, and tried to keep water moving. The union recruited him anyway, not with speeches, but with a fact. The Central Authority could shut water down with paperwork, and the union could keep water running with hands. Rafi joined because he could not stand watching elders faint in line while officials argued on screens. When the heat spiked, he did not think of mirrors. He thought of pumps. Heat made motors drag, seals soften, pressure drop. If pressure dropped, the clinic would lose flow. If the clinic lost flow, people would die quietly while leaders talked about stability. Rafi moved through the pump bay, checking coolant lines and the backup generator. He heard Mina's warning ripple across lanes and saw Nurse Delia setting shaded mats like triage. His jaw clenched. If this was natural, they would endure it. If it was something else, they would still endure it. But belief would change, and belief was the fuel of conflict. Back in orbit, Hannah listened to Cade and felt something sharp settle in her mind. The mirror had safety interlocks, and interlocks required manual confirmation at certain thresholds. If she pushed thermal load close to the edge, the system would demand a safety review. A safety review could slow the operation, maybe even force a pause, and a pause could give the basin time. But pushing thermal load was dangerous. Too far and the panel could warp. The station could lose capacity for months, and people elsewhere could die in a heatwave she failed to prevent. Hannah's hands hovered above auxiliary controls. The security leader spoke as if he could hear thought. "Do not," he said. "You cannot watch every finger twitch." Hannah replied. "We do not need to," he said. "We watch outcomes." Time moved on, and the heat did not stop rising. Hannah made a choice. 2 hours later, her shift felt like a war fought with fingertips. The mirror program loved to say it was precise, and precision meant responsibility. Every small move could be defended as care or condemned as sabotage. Hannah adjusted micro-angles within allowable tolerance, small enough to look like correction and large enough to blur the beam's hardest edge. She did it the way she learned to do everything up here, methodical. Logged, measured. She checked distribution after each nudge. She watched the basin's glow shift from a tight wound to a wider bruise. It was still harm, but it was slower harm. The station began to complain. Heat exchangers hummed louder, cooling loop pressure rose, and a yellow warning became orange. The security technician noticed the trend. "Thermal load is rising," he said. "We are approaching limits sooner than planned." Hannah kept her face blank. "Solar flux variation," she said. The model was optimistic. The technician looked uncertain. The security leader leaned toward his headset and spoke to someone Hannah could not hear. And then Director Cade returned. Voice calm again, and that calm felt like a blade. "Operator Voss, stop your adjustments," Cade said. Hannah's heart pounded. "What adjustments?" she asked. "You are redistributing within tolerance," Cade said. "You are clever. You are also transparent. Stop." "I am keeping the system safe," Hannah said. "Thermal load is rising." "Thermal load is acceptable," Cade replied. "Do not interfere with operational intent." "Operational intent," The phrase made Hannah's teeth ache. She looked at the heat map. Kestrel Basin still burned. On the ground, Mina and her neighbors dragged wet cloths into doorways, trying to cool rooms that had no cooling. Hannah could picture it too clearly. She took a breath. Director, if the panel crosses threshold, interlocks trigger, she said. The operation pauses. You lose time. Then do not let it cross. Cade said, hold your hands still. Let the system run as designed. Hannah did not hold still. She nudged angles again, small and precise. Thermal load climbed faster. The warning turned red. Safety threshold approaching. The technician swore under his breath. We will hit interlock, he said. The security leader turned toward Hannah. What did you do? He demanded. I kept people alive, Hannah said. The leader pushed off toward her console, hand reaching for the emergency lock. But Hannah was faster. She hit the safety key first. Safety interlock engaged. Manual confirmation required. Panel cluster entering hold state. The mirror's motion slowed. The beam softened fractionally. On the ground, the heat did not vanish, but it stopped sharpening. The security leader grabbed Hannah's wrist. You just crossed the line, he hissed. I crossed a threshold, Hannah replied. The system did what it was built to do. Cade's voice snapped through calm. Release her, he ordered. Do not cause damage. Operator Voss, cancel the interlock and resume operation. No, Hannah said. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. The station did not blare alarms. Alarms were theatrical. The station preferred procedures, and procedures arrived like a closing fist. Station security requesting final escalation key. Ground control approving. Audit board notified. Hannah understood what came next. A deeper key would cancel her hold and lock her out completely. Her refusal would become a footnote. Unless she made the hold a headline. Mateo's voice cut into her private channel, faint and urgent. Hannah, they are pulling a new key. They will lock you out completely. Hannah's eyes flicked to the doorway. Mateo stood there, pale, but steady, and his gaze did not waver. He was with her. That knowledge lit a small flame in her chest. The console asked its simple human question again. Manual confirmation required. Cade wanted quiet. Hannah would give him noise. Her fingers moved fast. She opened the event log export panel, a function meant for routine audits. The security technician saw it and shouted. Stop her. The leader released Hannah's wrist and shoved off toward the console. Mateo pushed into the bay and blocked the leader's path with his body strap, using the rail like a lever. Back off, Mateo said. You will be charged, the leader replied. Added to the list, Mateo said, and his voice carried no humor at all. Hannah initiated export. The station asked for authorization, and she selected the only channel not fully locked yet, Public Maintenance Bulletin. Limited bandwidth, slow. A progress bar crawled forward. The security technician typed commands to cancel export, and Hannah's console flashed. Conflict detected. Priority contest in progress. Hannah did not panic. She lived inside priority contests. She knew which options were safety theater and which were real emergencies. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a physical token that felt like an old key. Operator Emergency Disclosure Token. It existed for one purpose. If the station was being forced into unsafe conditions, the operator could broadcast a warning. It was never used. Using it was career suicide. Hannah slammed the token into the slot. The console chirped. Emergency disclosure initiated. Limited packet broadcast active. A text box appeared. Enter disclosure statement. Hannah typed fast, hands steady because fear had hardened into clarity. Mirror station executing sealed climate operation over Kestrel Basin. Heat intensity elevated beyond public advisory. Operation initiated under Climate Security Authority. Operator initiated safety hold due to thermal overload risk. Logs attached. She hit send. The station emitted a thin chirp again. Stronger now, and a packet burst into the public maintenance mesh tagged as safety disclosure. It would be copied, shared, and reposted before anyone could fully suppress it. Not because people loved truth, but because people loved scandal. The security leader roared. "Grab her." Hands reached for Hannah. She shoved off, using the console rail to swing away. Floating just out of reach, Mateo collided with one guard, twisting them off balance. The bay filled with breath, grunts, and the dull thud of bodies hitting padding. Hannah's message bar finished. Transmission complete. For a second, the station was quiet again. Cade's voice came through, not calm now. "What have you done?" he demanded. "I made it visible," Hannah said. "You cannot cook a basin in the dark anymore. You have just endangered national stability," Cade said. "No," Hannah replied. "You did." Cade's contempt sharpened his tone. "You think visibility protects people," he said. "Visibility creates panic. Panic kills faster than heat." "Heat kills quietly," Hannah said. "That is why you like it." The first ripple hit networks within minutes. A maintenance bulletin was not supposed to trend. It was supposed to be boring. Boring was the point. But sealed climate operation over Kestrel Basin was not boring. It was a match dropped into a dry room. A journalist on a night desk posted it with a headline that used the word weapon. A rival channel reposted with alleged, to sound careful. A third reposted with treason, to sound loyal. Clips of the log scrolled across screens, mirror angle indicators, thermal load graphs, timestamps proving the surge was not natural. On Kestrel Basin's local feeds, the message moved faster than official warnings. Neighbors forwarded it like a prayer. Some saw Hannah's name in metadata and went quiet. Some said her name out loud like a shield. In a Central Authority press room, a spokesperson was woken and handed a tablet. He stared at sealed and felt his career tilt. Calls climbed upward, toward Cade. Cade understood narrative. He would not try to erase the packet. Because erasure confirmed it, he would flood it. He would call it a routine safety audit, a misinterpreted data burst, an illegal breach by an unstable operator. He would highlight past mirror successes and frame the Dryline Union as extremists weaponizing public fear. He would do it while the basin sweated. Because sweat did not trend for long. Cade shifted tactics. "Operator Voss," he said, "I will make you an offer. Cancel the interlock. Resume the directive. In exchange, I will authorize aid shipments to Kestrel Basin and freeze enforcement for 72 hours. Hannah's breath caught. Aid shipments. Her mother. Her neighbors. This was not mercy. It was leverage. Mateo's voice came through, barely audible. "He is bluffing," he whispered. "Or maybe he is not. Either way, he is using you." On the ground, Mina heard shouting on the radio before she heard official language. Anchors talked too fast. Callers talked over each other. A neighbor's feed showed a split screen, a spokesperson denying, and shaky video of people pressing wet cloth to their faces while the air shimmered with heat. Mina did not have vocabulary for policy debates. She had vocabulary for bodies. She watched Nurse Delia check a boy's pulse and press him into the cool corner. She watched an elder woman's lips turn pale. She watched men carry water in smaller and smaller buckets, as if rationing could ration temperature. Then the clipped report came through. Emergency disclosure from an orbital mirror station indicates sealed climate operation over Kestrel Basin. Mina's hands trembled. They said her daughter's work out loud, but they did not say Hannah's name yet. A neighbor stepped into Mina's yard, eyes wide. "Is it true?" he asked. "Did they aim the sun at us?" "It feels like it," Mina said, "and it feels like it stopped being precise." The neighbor stared up, jaw clenched. "Why would they do that?" he whispered. "Because they think fear is cheaper than war," Mina said, and her voice sounded rough even to her. "And because they think we will accept anything if we are tired enough." She looked at her water drums under cloth. "Hannah," she whispered, "what did it cost you?" Back in orbit, Hannah listened to Cade's offer and felt her stomach twist. A freeze on enforcement was not relief. It was a pause designed to frame her choice as the reason people lived or died. It made her a gate, not a person. Cade wanted to turn her into a story. Hero if she complied. Villain if she refused. And either way he stayed central. Hannah forced herself to think like an operator again. What could she do that Cade could not easily undo? She could not stop the operation forever. But she could change the pattern so it could never be clean and concentrated again without visible damage. She could blunt the weapon by making precision expensive. The cost would spread. The cost always spread. That was how power stayed comfortable. Hannah looked at the Earth view. A blue curve that did not show borders, unions, or directors, only home. The southern cluster had a maintenance mode called scatter. Scatter was meant for safe testing, spreading light into a diffuse pattern that did not meaningfully change ground conditions. It also helped prevent overheating when something went wrong. Scatter required a manual sequence from the primary operator console. It was not in the remote directive. Hannah began the sequence. The security leader lunged, but Mateo caught his strap and yanked him sideways. Hannah's hands moved fast, trained, calm despite her heart. Scatter mode request entered. Manual confirmation required. Warning: this will reduce operational efficacy. Stop, Cade ordered. Hannah did not stop. The console asked again. Confirm scatter mode? Director, Hannah said, you can still choose not to do this. I chose. Cade replied. You will obey. Hannah looked at the confirmation prompt. In that moment she was not thinking about politics. She was thinking about a basin full of people who would never understand why the sun became a weapon. She pressed confirm. Cluster indicators shifted. The tight beam softened into a wider spread. Not harmless, but less brutal. Thermal load dropped slightly, and the operation's sharp edge dulled. You just degraded a strategic asset, Cade said, and his voice sounded like ice. I made it harder to hurt people quietly, Hannah replied. Scatter alone was not enough. A director like Cade did not need perfect precision to cause selective suffering. He only needed enough control. Hannah opened a diagnostic panel and pulled up a configuration never meant to be changed mid-operation. Panel calibration matrix. The matrix was the station's secret language: offsets, aging corrections, harmonization values. When it was correct, the southern cluster behaved like a single lens. When it was correct, the beam could be shaped with surgical care. When it was wrong, the beam would still work, but it would smear. Smear was safety in this moment. Smear was also damage. If she altered the matrix, the cluster would require full recalibration next cycle. That could take weeks. Weeks without full precision. Weeks where any attempt to deliver targeted heat would look incompetent. Weeks where the mirror would have to operate in broader patterns, protecting many places imperfectly instead of harming one place perfectly. Those weeks would have consequences. A coastal city might suffer more during a natural heat wave. A crop corridor might lose yield because the mirror could not nudge sunlight gently. Trade-offs were not abstract. Trade-offs had names and faces. Mateo's eyes widened when he saw the panel. Hannah, he said, barely breathing, that is massive. I know, Hannah said, and her voice shook. Cade's fury sharpened. You have crippled the array, he said. You have endangered countless people. You were going to endanger them anyway, Hannah replied. You were just going to choose which ones. She made the change. Calibration matrix adjusted. Warning: post-operation recalibration required. A notice appeared instantly. Maintenance schedule auto-generated. Resource request pending. Crew workload increase projected. The station did not care about ethics. It cared about calendars. Cade's voice lowered, and it was worse than shouting. You will be arrested, he said. You will be erased from any honorable record. Your family will not be protected. Fear spiked sharp and hot in Hannah's chest. Then she remembered something simple. Protection promised by a man like Cade was never protection. It was a leash. My family was never protected, Hannah said. They were just useful. The line went quiet. The mirror continued in scatter. Light spread wider, less concentrated. On the ground, Kestrel Basin still suffered, but the worst spike eased. The basin was not spared, but it would not be broken as quickly. It was not victory. It was a smaller loss. And sometimes that was the only kind available. Security finally caught Hannah. Gloves and straps closed around her wrists like a net. Mateo shouted and struggled, but 2 guards pinned him. Hannah did not fight. She had done what she came to do. As they pulled her away from the console, she turned her head toward the Earth view one last time. The blue curve did not look grateful. It only looked real. On the ground, Mina felt the heat crest like a wave and then, slowly, loosen its grip. The air stayed brutal, sweat-soaked shirts within minutes. But sunlight stopped feeling like a knife. People lying on cool floors sat up. Children drank water without vomiting it back. Mina pressed a wet cloth to her neck and listened to the radio again. This time it was not calm music. It was shouting. Anchors talking too fast. Officials denying. Officials promising inquiries. A clipped report followed. Emergency disclosure from an orbital mirror station indicates sealed climate operation over Kestrel Basin. Government spokesperson states operation was within safety limits. Local residents report severe heat conditions. Within hours, Kestrel Basin became a symbol. In distant cities, people posted sympathy and donation links. Others posted anger and claimed the basin brought pressure on itself by resisting audits. Others posted conspiracy threads insisting mirror arrays had been weaponized for years. Some defended the program and argued that any tool used for stability could be misread by those who wanted chaos. In a dry basin, none of that language cooled the air. Nurse Delia built a schedule to check elders every hour. Teenagers carried water and salt to houses at the far end of the lane. Delia told people not to be proud. Pride killed in heat. Pride kept men standing in sunlight too long. Raffi watched the pump pressure gauge quiver as motors strained. He saw a contractor truck pass without stopping. Crew inside wearing cooling vests. And he felt something harden. If central authority wanted obedience, it would get something else. It would get hatred. And hatred lasted longer than heat. Mina did not speak that word out loud. She did not need to. She heard it in the questions people asked. Why us? Why now? Why does the sky feel like a lever? In a central authority press room, a spokesperson read from a prepared statement. He said routine. He said safety. He said misinterpretation. He said extremist groups were spreading panic. He said mirror arrays saved lives every year. On a second screen behind him, a live ticker showed emergency clinic visits rising. Sweat did not lie. Bodies did not care about statements. Behind the scenes, Cade's office issued different instructions. Flood feeds with expert commentary. Highlight past successes. Question Hannah's mental fitness. Emphasize union sabotage. Frame disclosure as an illegal breach that endangered national stability. Cade was not trying to win truth. He was trying to win time. Time made people tired, and tired people accepted simpler stories. In Kestrel Basin, the heat did not become a headline. It became a schedule. Mina and Delia kept people moving between shade and water. Hour by hour, they argued with bodies that could fail without warning, not with officials who could deny without sweating. By late afternoon, rumors arrived fast. Some said the mirror operator had been detained. Some said ground security would lock the station down. Some said the next heat surge would be worse. Just to prove a point. Mina did not know what was true. She knew one fact. Her daughter warned them. And the sky listened for a moment. Mina tightened shade cloth over water drums and spoke to neighbors in a low voice. Do not wait for permission. She said, do not wait for comfort. Get ready again. She looked up once. Hannah, she whispered, hold on. Hannah woke in a restraint cocoon. The kind used for patient transport. The lights were brighter here. Clinical and unforgiving. Her wrists ached. Her throat was dry. A panel on the wall displayed a single line. Operator under detention pending transfer. Hannah tried to sit up, and the cocoon straps tightened. A guard floated nearby with a blank face, watching as if she might escape by thinking hard enough. Her wrist calm was gone. Her personal contacts were gone. She had been reduced to a body with a record. Across the bay, Matteo sat strapped to a bench, bruised at the jaw, eyes fixed on nothing. A second guard watched him too, as if Matteo might hack the air with his thoughts. Hannah caught Matteo's gaze. He tried to smile, and it looked like pain. I am sorry, Hannah said, her voice hoarse. Matteo shook his head slowly. No, he said, this is what it looks like when a system meets its own advertisement. A door hissed open. Director Soren Cade entered the bay in person, anchored and composed, as if visiting a workplace. He did not look like a villain. He looked like a man who slept well. His hair was neat, his uniform was tailored, his eyes carried the calm of someone who believed history would thank him. He stopped beside Hannah and regarded her for a moment. "You are brave," he said. Hannah laughed once, short and empty. "Do not flatter me," she said. "Flattery is for recruits." "Not flattery," Cade said. "Assessment. Bravery is common. Discipline is rare. You lack discipline." "Discipline is not the same as obedience," Hannah replied. Cade inclined his head as if acknowledging a point. "Agreed," he said. "Discipline is obedience to an outcome, not to a feeling." "You wanted an outcome," Hannah said. "You wanted them to kneel." "I wanted them to stop sabotaging pumps," Cade said. "I wanted children in coastal cities to keep drinking water. I wanted refugee lines to stop expanding." "And you thought heat was the clean way," Hannah said. "Heat is quieter than bullets," Cade replied. "Quieter than bombing, quieter than occupation. It is also easier to deny," Hannah said. Cade did not deny it. "You forced visibility," he said. "You forced me to manage a scandal, not just a basin." Hannah watched him. "And what will you do now?" she asked. "I will adapt," Cade said. "I always adapt. The mirror array will be recalibrated. New protocols will be written. Operators will be screened more carefully." Cold slid through Hannah's chest. "So you learned nothing," she said. "I learned the correct lesson," Cade replied. "Human attachment is a fault line. You revealed where to apply pressure." "You threatened my family," Hannah said. "I stated reality," Cade said. "In unstable systems, families suffer. My job is to choose who suffers least." "You keep saying least," Hannah said, "but you never stand where the suffering lands." Cade met her gaze. "I stand at the center of decision," he said. "That is worse than standing in heat." "No," Hannah said, "it is different. You get to pretend it is clean." Cade leaned slightly closer. "In a week, they will call you a traitor," he said. "In a year, they may call you a pioneer. In 10 years, they will forget your name. Cities will still be standing because I did what you could not." Hannah's voice softened, and the softness surprised her. "You think survival is only cities," she said. "You think survival is infrastructure. Survival is also trust. Trust is built after order," Cade said, "not before. And if you never stop using fear," Hannah said, "you will never need order. You will only need more fear." Cade straightened. "You will be transferred," he said. "You will be tried. The record will be clear." "The record is already public," Hannah said. Cade paused. "You believe that protects you," he said. "I believe it protects truth," Hannah replied. "Truth is harder to aim than sunlight." Cade did not answer. He turned and pushed off toward the door with practiced control. Before he exited, he spoke one last sentence, quiet enough to feel personal. "Do not confuse noise with change," he said. The door closed. Hannah lay in the cocoon and listened to the station's hum. She did not feel heroic. She felt like someone who threw a stone at a giant and watched the stone vanish. Still, somewhere below, a basin had been warmed. Somewhere below, the heat had been less precise. Sometimes that was the only victory available. Days later, the station's orbit carried it back over Kestrel Basin. Hannah was no longer at the console. She was in transit, strapped and silent, headed toward a tribunal that would pretend neutrality. Through a small port window, she saw Earth again, curved and distant. Kestrel Basin was only a patch of color from up here. She could not see her mother's yard, shade cloth, or water drums, but she could imagine them. On the ground, Mina sat in the coolest room, listening to radio and telling neighbors what to do next. She did not wait for official aid. Official aid came with forms and conditions. And sometimes it came with cameras. And sometimes it came too late. Instead, Mina and Delia built their own aid network. A farmer with a small generator ran a fan schedule for the clinic. A mechanic repaired a broken coolant pump with salvaged seals. A teenage boy biked water to houses at the far edge, sweating through his shirt and refusing to stop. Raffi kept the pump station alive through worst hours. Hands raw from gripping hot metal. He rerouted flow to keep the clinic stable. He lied to an inspector and called it maintenance. He knew he was committing a crime. He also knew the difference between law and care. When the heat finally eased, the basin did not celebrate. It counted losses. A field of young crops wilted. A few animals died even under shade. 2 elders did not wake after midday. Delia wrote their names in the clinic ledger and did not speak for a long time. Then the other effect arrived. Quieter but sharper. People began to talk openly about mirrors. They began to look up in daylight. They began to wonder which summers had been natural and which had been nudged. They began to ask whether stability was a gift or a leash. In distant cities, people argued online until boredom replaced anger. In the basin, people argued in person until fear replaced boredom. Hannah could not hear any of it from the transit pod. She could only imagine its shape and hope imagination was enough to keep her from breaking. At the tribunal facility, a clerk read charges in a flat voice. Unauthorized transmission. Interference with lawful directive. Degradation of strategic infrastructure. Risk to public safety. Incitement of panic. Each charge felt like a different version of the same sentence. You embarrassed the wrong people. Across the hall, Matteo was processed separately. He did not speak. He stared at the wall as if it might reveal a hidden route out. When his eyes met Hannah's for a second, he mouthed one word. Worth it. Hannah swallowed hard. Worth it suggested a clean scale. Nothing was clean. That night, alone in a holding cell that smelled of disinfectant and recycled air, Hannah received one message. It was not from her mother. Mina's channels were blocked. The message came from an unknown relay. Short and unsigned. Kestrel Basin is organizing. They heard you. They are not alone. Hannah pressed her forehead to the cool wall and breathed. It was not relief. It was not victory. It was only the smallest space inside her chest where hope could stand without collapsing. Outside the facility, a crowd gathered. Some held signs calling her traitor. Some held signs calling her truth. Most held nothing. Most watched, curious and tired, because symbols were cheaper than solutions. A camera drone hovered and captured Hannah's face as she was moved down a corridor. The public needed a symbol, and symbols were easier to hold than responsibility. Hannah did not look away. If she looked away, they would fill her silence with their own story. If she looked forward, at least the story would have a face that had chosen. I did not save the world, she said. I saved a morning. Sometimes a saved morning was how a future began.